What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to another collaboration between the Home Field Podcast and the 104.601 Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Dabra.
And I'm your host, Kevin Valentin. What's going on, everybody?
So, we have a new announcement for you guys. We wanted to let you guys know that Kevin and I have come up with a name for our new and up and coming podcast, our joint venture. The new podcast will be called the Neighborhood Podcast. So, we're still working on a timetable for when the logo is going to be released, but I imagine it'll probably be sometime within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Maybe by the end of the month, we'll probably have it ready to go. But it is going to be the Neighborhood Podcast from here on out. Kev, um, you and I have discussed this privately for the last couple of weeks or so. Just kind of I want you to give your thoughts about this venture that we're to go on from this point forward.
Well, first of all, as I always say, I appreciate you for doing the podcast with me. It's not easy with our schedules and whatnot, but we make do. Um, to the point of the actual name of the podcast, Kyle and I actually come from two different places, as you probably have heard. I'm from the Bronx. Kyle's from Enfield, Connecticut. So, I mean, we both come from totally different worlds, but at the same time, very similar worlds. We became friends here in Fort Myers when I moved here after Kyle. And it kind of assimilated from that point, like our friendship, our point of view, our interest in sports, our views on life. I mean, it just, this name makes the most sense because Kyle was the home field podcast, his home field, Connecticut Enfield. I was the 104.601 podcast. That was the zip code of my old hometown. So I just felt like we both felt like the neighborhood kind of like collaborated both of our hoods, the places we grew up, and assimilated this podcast and brought us together. So, I mean, I'm excited. I love it. I think it flows perfectly. The logo is TBD. We do need to officially kind of come out with that, amongst ourselves again privately. But we are working on it. Shout out to my girlfriend who said voluntarily that she will uh, go out and make it for us, like she did my own. It's going to be a great adventure to kind of, put all of our ideas kind of culminated together and see what we come up with. But I couldn't be happier and couldn't be more excited to start this journey, my boy.
Yeah, and I think at this point, it was bound to happen. We've been talking about this for several weeks, if not months, about this venture coming together. And I think by and large, I think just the viewers that we have in our audience definitely like the back and forth dialogue that we have, and it's definitely entertaining for me. I know it is for you, and I imagine it's the same for our listeners and our watchers on YouTube and whoever listens to it on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcast. And I think going forward, it'll just be great. I look forward to it. It's going to be fun. It doesn't matter what topic we get into, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, it doesn't matter. It'll just be fun. I've enjoyed doing the podcast collaborations with you over these past few months, and there will definitely be more to come within, for the foreseeable future, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah, bro. The what they say in that North Carolina game? The ceiling is the roof or some shit like that. I forget what it was, but
You're
sky's the limit.
you're more of a UNC fan than me, so I don't
Oh,
know. I don't
trust
know
me,
what
I
to
know.
say.
It's just I forgot what it was. It was like the meme of like Jordan's face on the ceiling or something. It was funny as shit. But yeah, I'm hyped.
But with that said, I'll still have the home field podcast logo on our YouTube channel just until we're able to kind of figure out a logo when it's actually released. So a lot of the logos will still have like the home field podcast when we put it up on YouTube. But once we're able to figure out the logo situation, we will transition from the home field podcast YouTube channel, and we will edit it to make it the neighborhood podcast, and then we'll be able to put the logo on all the YouTube thumbnails that you guys see, except right now it's still going to be the home field podcast until we're able to figure out that logo. But with that said, we do have a lot to get into today. Just to kind of give you guys a rundown of the topics that we're going to go over. We're going to go over JJ Watt signing with the Arizona Cardinals. So he signed a 2-year deal over $30 million. We'll get into that in a little bit. After that, we'll talk about the cap situation that the New Orleans Saints are facing with right now. They are facing a pretty daunting cap space situation going into this offseason. They have to address cutting over $60 million in cap space before, I want to say, the beginning of June. I don't know if there's an actual deadline to get the cap down to a certain point, but we will definitely get into that. And then to wrap up the episode, Kevin and I will go over another what if scenario. So if you guys remember, we did a what if scenario with Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes just a few weeks ago leading up to Super Bowl 55. This will be another issue of that, but we will focus on the what if scenario of Chris Paul being traded to the Lakers. And if you guys remember anything about that trade that was originally packaged, Chris Paul was supposed to go to the Lakers. It would send another bevy of players to Houston and New Orleans.
New Orleans.
And we will go over the impact of that trade being rejected by the NBA and the impact that it had on the Lakers, New Orleans, and Houston at the time of that trade being denied by the NBA commissioner's office. But with that said, that'll be the basic rundown for the episode. But like I said at the top, we will go over the JJ Watt news. So, like I stated at the beginning of the podcast, JJ Watt is now officially an Arizona Cardinal. So he signed a 2-year deal, upwards of $31 million, $23 million guaranteed. And it is going to be a very interesting situation for the Cardinals defensive front because they have Chandler Jones and JJ Watt, which forms a pretty scary 1-2 punch at the defensive line part of the depth chart. So, Kev, let me get your initial take on what you think this trade is for the Cardinals. Excuse me, this signing for the Cardinals.
So JJ signing the 2-year, $31 million deal this afternoon, it threw me for a loop. So JJ stated he was tired of losing throughout the year. He obviously made that very long speech. I forget if that was week 14 or 15, stating he was upset with the team's lack of effort, the team's lack of a drive, and the kind of the cockiness that was in the locker room between young players, basically kind of saying, we're getting paid, it doesn't matter, we're already losing. So I had when Kyle and I made our original predictions when JJ was released, I at least myself immediately thought he was going to contender. I know Kyle had made an episode because I was in the process of moving that he, put some projections of where he believed he would go: Indianapolis, Kansas City, Green Bay, and some other locations. All of them being win now teams. All of those teams having the same thing in common of at least minimum divisional round playoffs to, make a stride or make a run to a Super Bowl. So, excuse my frankness when I say this, I don't think the Cardinals are anywhere close to that. No disrespect to Kyler Murray or DeAndre Hopkins or Cliff Kingsbury, but I want to say that the Arizona Cardinals are basically a later version of the Texans. Their secondary is weak. Patrick Peterson's on the tail end of his career. He's a free agent. All they have is Budda Baker. Chandler Jones just tore his biceps this last season. JJ Watt himself is injury prone for the majority of the time. Their young and up and coming star is a linebacker that's Isaiah Simmons. And offensively, as we saw, they live and die by Kyler Murray. The run game was inconsistent. If it's not DeAndre Hopkins, the safety blanket of Larry Fitzgerald may or may not be there. He's still weighing on whether or not he'll return. And they went, 8-8 last year? And they were ousted of the playoffs by Chicago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Chicago got that last spot.
So JJ goes from a 4-12 team to an 8-8 team. So he goes to a 500 team. So he goes up. But to a certain extent, I feel like he kind of went maybe like angled, because he didn't go laterally because they are better than Houston. Mm-hmm. But he didn't necessarily go to a team in which I thought that he would immediately have an impact to succeed. So JJ earlier in the week, if not last week, had stated not he came out, but there were reports that JJ's target pay per year was going to be anywhere between $15 to $16 million. So immediately that ruled out Kyle and I's contenders between Kansas City and Green Bay, because Green Bay's got its own contract situation that Kyle and I will get into later in the offseason with Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers needing new contracts. They were already $5 million over the cap. Pittsburgh is restructuring Ben's deal, so we knew that the Pittsburgh situation wasn't going to happen. Obviously, Kansas City's got its own contract situation with Pat Mahomes basically being half the roster himself. So with JJ openly, or his agent or whoever leaked the report saying JJ's target range of payment was the range that he said, it already started cutting teams out of the mix. And I started seeing reports, I'm pretty sure Kyle saw them too, that he was looking at Cleveland, that he was looking at Buffalo. Again, teams already in the playoffs, teams already that just need a few more pieces to succeed. And a veteran like JJ Watt, who actually led the league in double team percentages with over 30% of double teams on pass rushes, which is incredible at 32, 33 years old, that he still demands that much authority. He would have made that situation better for both of those teams. Obviously, Myles Garrett, JJ Watt, scary. And obviously the dominancy of Buffalo's entire 11-man defensive team, along with Shaq Lawson and some other star players, would have helped them kind of get them over the hump to maybe give Pat Mahomes a little bit of a run for his money. But to get back on topic, the fact that he signed with Arizona to me makes absolutely no sense. I think, like other reporters that leaked or that reported this earlier, I think the reason he chose Arizona was because they were able to give him $23 million up front and say, hey, we're going to give you this big chunk. You got to play out the rest of that $8 million over 2 years. That's not really difficult. JJ's obviously going to give them 130%, but the destination itself, JJ already said money wasn't everything because he got the world from Houston. They gave him every ounce of money and every penny that he could have asked for. But I thought he would have learned his lesson, because I don't see Arizona doing any damage in the West, or should I say the NFC West, significantly, because you have San Francisco coming back fully reloaded with all of their players that were injured last season. You have Seattle, who still has Russell Wilson as of right this very second. I mean, those negotiations seem to be getting worse and worse as we report every couple of weeks. And obviously, you still have, oh my God, I'm going blank. Don't tell me. Arizona.
You got the Rams.
The Rams. And obviously, you have the Rams with Matthew Stafford. So it's probably the most, if not the top two most competitive divisions in football. And you have JJ Watt being inserted into the mix. It doesn't scream playoffs. It doesn't scream NFC Championship run. It definitely doesn't scream Super Bowl run. So it's questionable to me. I'm happy he got paid. Great individual, great philanthropist. He's an amazing person from what I've seen. Obviously, I don't know him, but I don't know, man. It just makes me scratch my head. The signing doesn't really make sense to me.
Well, I do think it is slightly an upgrade for him personally, because the way that I see it with where Houston's going to be next year, Houston's going to be in the gutter next year, because more than likely Deshaun Watson's getting traded, and they're going to have a nightmare situation at the quarterback spot in Houston next year. So I think Houston's looking like probably like a 2-14, 3-13 team next year, just because I don't think they're going to go anywhere. Deshaun was really the reason why Houston was able to actually be somewhat competitive this season. But with JJ Watt going to the Arizona Cardinals, I do think that it's a much better situation than what he would have in Houston. And I think it's an okay move. I'm not thrilled about this move, but I don't hate it. And the thing is, I think it definitely helps their pass rush. I think having that 1-2 punch with Chandler Jones and JJ Watt is going to be solid. The only issue is are both of those guys going to be healthy? Chandler Jones is coming off torn biceps last year. JJ Watt has had a checkered history with injuries these past few seasons that have really kind of derailed the last couple years of his career. And we don't know whether or not that he's going to be able to stay healthy for the majority of the year next year. Obviously, you and I would love to see him produce great for Arizona next year, but I just hope that he could stay healthy. But I think the one thing that Arizona is banking on is their pass rush coming up huge, so it can kind of help cover their deficiencies or their weaknesses in their secondary, because that is really the main issue I see with this Arizona Cardinals defense, and it's their secondary. There were numerous amounts of times where Patrick Peterson, all-pro cornerback, got torched. I specifically remember when Buffalo was going up against Arizona with about 35 seconds left. Arizona's going up against Josh Allen, and Josh Allen throws a dime pass to Stephon Diggs, and Stephon Diggs absolutely torched Patrick Peterson on that. I think it was like a route to the corner, and ended up getting a nice little toe drag with it. So, if you look at this Arizona team overall, I do think that they're trending in the right direction. I think they're still working out some growing pains with Kyler Murray being at the helm for the quarterback spot. He did show some flashes specifically within the first half of the season and then kind of fell off in the second half of the season, but he was dealing with injuries of his own too. So the one thing that I would like to see just overall from this team is, can they stay healthy for the entire year for the most part next year? If they're able to stay healthy next year, you add JJ Watt into the mix, I could see this team maybe going, let's say 10-6 next year, but it's really all dependent on if they could stay healthy. I think JJ Watt, he does add a nice veteran leadership aspect to the team, specifically on the defense as well. So I think having that locker room presence will be huge for Arizona on the defensive side of the ball. And who knows? I mean, you add JJ Watt into the mix, maybe he can give Kyler Murray some pointers about just the pass rushes that they're going to expect going into next season. And look, like I said at the top, I didn't love this move, but I didn't hate it. And I think for JJ Watt, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's like a lateral move for him. I think it's going to be a slight upgrade just because of how bad Houston's going to be next year. So that's kind of my take on the whole JJ Watt signing with Arizona.
So check this out, right? So, obviously, big Colts fan. I listen to a lot of Pat McAfee's show on Barstool Sports, right? I listen to a lot of his segments and kind of pay attention throughout the day to some of the things they talk about. So Pat made a funny point. Long story short, he kind of was insinuating, not based off of any reports, not based off of any rumors, just his own mindset, just his own opinion. What if, just a hypothetical, an absolute hypothetical, again, Pat McAfee said this, not me. He said, imagine if Arizona is trying to get into the Deshaun Watson trade. Hear me out. Pat said, it's not like they're going to need their first round picks because they already have Kyler and DeAndre locked up on deals. If they trade for Deshaun, that immediately catapults them into an NFC championship title. Obviously, immediate competition, better than what they already are. No disrespect to Kyler's ability, but if they were to swap quarterbacks and a couple of picks, Arizona is already picking middle to late of the pack as it is. So it's not like they're missing out on any lottery picks. So if they were to package up Kyler Murray, 2 or 3 first round picks, maybe some second round picks, and maybe Houston gives them some compensation with some later picks, that if they were to do a full swap and kind of get Houston's, junk mail, as Pat said, you know what I mean? Like if they were to get a full assembly of former Houston players in D-Hop, Deshaun Watson, and JJ Watt, just the irony behind it, they do play each other this season based off of the schedule that the NFL released. It would be ironic. Cliff Kingsbury, of course, is a quarterback whispering coach. We saw the drastic improvement of Kyler Murray from his rookie season to this season. So, I mean, there's no fluidity to any of that, but that speculation kind of makes you think. I don't think Arizona would trade Kyler, in my opinion, but if they would, you put Deshaun over Kyler. You already have the chemistry with D-Hop, the defensive end. He already knows JJ's got it. JJ's going to figure it out. Maybe make some trades, maybe sign some more some defensive backs. Who knows? Buda Baker back there too. So I don't know if that immediately puts Arizona in a title contention, a Super Bowl run, but I know that right now JJ's signing with the Cardinals, like you said, maybe makes them a game or two better, but I don't know if it makes them an immediate contender. But Pat had a good point earlier, so I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, like I said, I think the best case scenario for the Cardinals next year is that they finish 10-6. I think we're going to see some progression from Kyler Murray next year. I think the defense is going to continue to struggle, specifically in the secondary. And I think Kyler's going to have to he's going to have to carry a little more weight on his shoulders because that defense does have a tendency to get lit up every now and then. So, but I mean, to address the whole Deshaun Watson hypothetical, I mean, look, they'd have to significantly address his cap hit for next year because, I mean, his cap hit for this year is only 15 million, but it jumps up to 40 million next year. So they would have to really adjust and really restructure his contract to make it work. And I don't even know how much cap space Arizona really has right now. They're going to be they're going to be pretty cash strapped going into this year after the signing with JJ Watt. So I think it's fun. I could definitely see where Pat McAfee went with the hypothetical, and it does make a little bit of sense because look, you have DeAndre Hopkins there. Now you've got JJ Watt. So you've got two former Houston Texan players in Arizona. And you mentioned that Arizona is scheduled to play Houston next year. The only thing is, though, is Deshaun Watson's probably not going to be on the team. So there have been reports that Deshaun is pretty much out of Houston at this point, just because the relationship between him and the Houston front office is beyond repair at this point. So we don't really know where Deshaun's going to be next year. But you do have two former Houston Texans players there, and maybe could they entice a trade to get him there? Maybe, but I think the Arizona is too invested on Kyler Murray. I think Cliff Kingsbury is really in love with Kyler, even though that he's had some issues so far, but most of those issues are pertaining to his injury history at this point. But as far as his play goes, Kyler is definitely a solid quarterback going into this would be his third year, correct?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't abandon ship from Kyler Murray yet. He's definitely shown some flashes so far. I think he's going to progress next year. And I think Deshaun on the Arizona Cardinals is a nice hypothetical. It's just that I think Cliff Kingsbury is way too invested into Kyler Murray, and I think he sees a lot more potential with Kyler moving forward. And I just don't think that they would be able to work out a Deshaun trade at this point. Just kind of how I see it.
So peep this, right? This season, Arizona's got $11 million in cap, based off of the report here on overthecap.com. Next season, they have $90 million. So again, this could be incorrect, but it seems that their contracts go from 56 total contracts this season. So a lot of people are finished up this season. Next season, they only have 25.
Okay.
So it only furthers Pat's hypothetical or hypothesis because you can afford it. JJ can restructure if he knows. I guarantee you DeAndre Hopkins will restructure because they got to re-sign a lot of bodies. That'll be Cliff Kingsbury's, third year potentially this season? Is it his third or was this year his second? I don't remember.
This was his third.
This was Cliff's third year?
No. He's going into his third.
So Cliff's third year already showed that they've improved. Kyler went from rookie of the year to a potential MVP candidate. Imagine he gets a guy that's already engulfed in the system. I'm just saying, Pat's suggestion, I didn't realize it makes a lot more sense because that cap is huge.
There's only one problem.
Availability.
There's only one problem with your claim is it would have to assume that Deshaun Watson doesn't get traded this season.
That's what I'm saying. It would be this offseason to trade.
No, because
if it happened,
I mean maybe, but
that's what I'm saying. Since the trade speculation's happening, I Pat thinks that maybe they'll kind of jump into the mix.
Yeah, maybe. It's just that
now you got two former Texans that can be like, "Yo, D, come up over here."
But the problem is that it's going to cut their cap in half. Like it's
going
to cut their potential cap space.
If it puts you in win now, like this roster with Deshaun Watson, he's reunited with a top 3 receiver, already one of his best friends.
Yeah, maybe.
Larry will definitely come back if he sees it, and he'll sign for a vet minimum. Larry don't care about no money, and they'll work it out.
I mean, it depends, but based off of the reports that I've seen so far, Deshaun's basically only interested in 3 teams, which include, if I remember right, it's the Jets, the Dolphins,
Miami,
and the Panthers. I think those are the 3. I don't even think Chicago's in the mix anymore.
No, Chicago can't afford them. We could talk about Chicago in a second because Chicago's out here talking about getting Alex Smith or, being in the running for Alex Smith. But we don't have time for that today. But,
yeah, I mean, I give Pat McAfee some credit. It's a cool hypothetical. And if he ends up getting that hypothetical right, then he's a freaking guru. He knows a lot more than we do. But I just think that the Cardinals are too invested in the Kyler Murray at this point. I think he's
the broomstick. My dog Pat McAfee.
But it's a cool hypothetical. I'm definitely
open to it. You know what I'm saying?
I'm open to it. It's just that I just don't think that it's going to happen.
I don't think so either. But it's the fucking NFL.
Yeah, exactly.
It takes one phone call.
Exactly.
It takes one phone call.
Yeah. But I'll tell you what, if they were able to finesse that trade,
bro, all I'm saying is Arizona might be Super Bowl bound. That's all I'm gonna say. I said might be. I didn't say for sure. They might be. That would be a beautiful matchup against Tom Brady.
That defense scares me though. That defense scares me just because that they have a license. They have an ability to get torched, and there were multiple times where, look, even Patrick Peterson got cooked. So
I agree, but look at Kansas City. Their secondary is probably their weakest feet also, and they find ways to get it done. And their pass rush isn't as good as Arizona's pass rush.
Well, I mean, in the Super Bowl for the Chiefs, I mean, no side of the ball.
Yeah, you know what I mean. I'm just saying it's about the quarterback play. As a lot of people say, it's all about the offense. So if you get Deshaun in that quarterback system and that system with DeAndre Hopkins, who knows? Who knows? But we spent a lot of time on this topic.
Hold up before you end it.
What you got?
Before you end it, if it's all about the offense, I'm still of the mindset that defense wins championships. I mean,
I'm on the same boat because I'm a defensive-minded individual, someone that plays corner and safety when we play football, and someone that's always been attracted to the defensive side of the football. You have to have some shred of a defense to make a play, because if it's a shootout back and forth, first defense to make a play usually wins the game.
Yeah.
So yes, I agree with that completely. You definitely have to have some form of a playmaker on that other side of the ball, which they do in JJ and Chandler Jones now. Budda Baker obviously is an incredible playmaker in the secondary of his own, but he can't cover the field himself. So
exactly. But we spent a lot of time on this topic. We will transition into our next topic, which is the nightmare of a cap situation that the New Orleans Saints are in for this offseason. Kev, do you have the numbers pulled up for the Saints cap issues or the cap number for the Saints this offseason?
So as of right this second, the New Orleans Saints are scheduled heading into 2021 to be more than $75 million over the salary cap. For those of you that are unaware how that works, in the NFL, every team is basically granted a budget, an allowance of money that they can spend on their teams for all positions, for coaches, for all of that. There's just a total cap that they're available. That cap, typically, depending on the NFLPA, the NFL Players Association, and the NFL, they discuss where they have agreements on, the salary cap going up based off of business and demand and salaries and whatever, and the cost of living. This season, it goes up a little bit more once again. So the Saints, for whatever reason, felt that they needed to buy in last season and give a lot of people extensions. And over the last couple of years, they have spent quite a bit of money on some key players. Now, this obviously, as I stated, every year, this puts a team on a cap strain, as they call it, and contracts sometimes spread and get worse over the course of the years that the players sign. So next year, a lot of players are getting paid bulk amounts of their contract in one shot, which puts basically New Orleans in between a rock and a rock, not a rock and a hard place. They have absolutely no playroom. They have no wiggle room. Again, for those of you that don't understand, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, Drew Brees' contract, it did get renegotiated, but I'm just saying overall for like big player names, you have DeMario Davis, you have Cameron Jordan, Quan Alexander, just a number of all-pro players that were given massive extensions because they rightfully deserved it. But again, when you only pay a handful of players, basically over 50% of your salary, you don't have money going forward. You don't have money to bring in other people. You don't have enough money to basically pay your bench or play other positions. So New Orleans in a tough spot. Obviously, if I'm looking at this correctly, New Orleans is looking at, where did it go?
New Orleans is what, 75? They're still $70 million.
Yeah, they are, but that's estimated. All of their cap space is about $72 million as of right this second. But they have a lot of players that are coming up that they need to re-sign or let go, and that's going to make it worse. So they need to basically revamp this whole roster. We have their left tackle, Teron Armstead, that's available, and obviously we know the left tackle market can be very expensive. We had Ryan Ramczyk, one of their all-pro guards, or their right tackle. I forget what side, but he's on the right side of protecting the quarterback. We all know that side of the line can be quite expensive. Marshawn Lattimore, Pro Bowl, All-Pro corner out of Ohio State. We know that his market is going to be upwards over $15 million a year. We have Marcus Williams, Sheldon Rankings, Trey Hendrickson, one of their best pass rushers. People are going to seek out paydays, and a lot of these players are going to know off rip. Only some can be tagged, aka franchise tag, where certain teams have the opportunity to kind of lock a player down for the year and say, hey, we don't have the money to give you a full contract extension, but we're at liberty to give you this amount of money based off of the total average of what the top player positions are getting. So they kind of average out the top receiver money, and that'll be the franchise tag amount for a receiver if they were to decide to tag somebody.
Yep.
So a lot of these players are in question. A lot of players are being paid that they probably don't deserve to be paid. I mean, there are a list of players, and I'll let you get into it, but I just wanted to give everybody a synopsis of how it all works. Point blank period, New Orleans is fucked. 72, $75 million is pretty bad. So,
and this is already accounting for Drew Brees' contract. So they already dropped Drew Brees' base salary down to just over $1 million. So going into this offseason, they were basically either at or above $100 million against the cap going into this offseason before they even touched Drew Brees' contract, which basically kind of signifies that he's not even going to be on the team next year, and he's still kind of mulling retirement at this point. But outside of him, yeah, New Orleans is in a world of trouble. And really what you're seeing here is the consequences of going for it. Look, they had a couple years left with Drew Brees, and they had multiple opportunities to get at least a shot at the Super Bowl, and it just didn't work out. And now they're going to pay the price for it because if I remember right, the cap just for this year is, I think, somewhere around like $100 to $185 million. And as of right now, New Orleans' payroll is just above like $250 or $260 million. Like, they've got a significant amount of cap to still cut before they can even get close to
total all players, $260 million.
Yes, I mean they got a lot of way. They got a long way to go here, and I'll give you a good player of somebody where they're just completely overpaying for the player at this point. Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is pretty much just a utility player. He plays maybe 15, 20 snaps a game, and he's getting paid a base salary of just around $10.75 million. His cap hit for this year is just over $16 million for a guy that doesn't even play the majority of the snaps. He could be a cap casualty this offseason. I'm looking across the rest of the roster here. Teron Armstead, he's $16 million against the cap this offseason. You got Michael Thomas, who's basically
Janoris Jenkins.
Yeah. So look, if I'm New Orleans, look, maybe you move Michael Thomas this offseason. Maybe you could get some draft picks back for him just to get him off your books going into next season, just because there's no way that they're going to be able to keep all of these guys with the cap hit that they have. I think Cam Jordan, I think he stays. I could see Taysom Hill getting cut or being moved. Just kind of looking at some of the defensive players here, I think Demario Davis, he stays. He's pretty much the captain of the defense at this point, maybe outside of maybe Malcolm Jenkins and Marshawn Lattimore, but he is a stud at that linebacker spot for him. You mentioned Marshawn Lattimore. I wonder if they're mulling the idea of maybe moving on from him just to cut the cap at this point. But yeah, I think New Orleans is going to be in for some dark days here moving forward, just because these are the consequences that you get when you go for it. And I mean, when you're $70 million against the cap, they've got some work cut out for them. And I don't envy who's ever running the front office for New Orleans at this point, because this is a nightmare scenario that you're dealing with here.
Oh, big time. So, I mean, like, just like you said, Taysom Hill, don't understand why he got paid all that money. Michael Thomas, with the injury and the off the field issues, aka the practice situation and the problems with the coaching staff, you obviously have Janoris Jenkins being a little bit on the older side. He played decent last year, but for him to be getting paid $13 million right this moment, and then obviously like we both said, Marshawn Lattimore, young. We know he's going to chase that bag. We know that he's going to try to ask anywhere from $15 to $18 million, that top corner money. And New Orleans just doesn't have it. Does that mean that he decides to leave? Does that mean he decides to request a tag or a trade? I don't know. But New Orleans has not only players to consider moving off their books, but players to retain to build their future. Malcolm Jenkins, 32 million. He's owed $32 million over the next 4 years. Plays every snap. Great player. He's 33.
Yeah.
When you're done paying him, he's going to be 36. That's just ridiculous to me. To invest in a player at his age, I would have given him a 2-year, maybe a $20 million deal, something like that. $32 million for 4 year, crazy. Michael Thomas, like I said, he's having offseason ankle surgery. He decided to play through it for Drew Brees. Ironically enough, Drew Brees ended up getting hurt himself, so they didn't really get to play together much. And Michael Thomas missed almost, if not more than half the season. So he didn't really get to produce. And then they saw the dark side of Michael Thomas punching somebody in practice, him kind of throwing tantrums on the sideline, him being disgruntled with the play calling this season. So, I mean, do they move their star all-pro number one wide receiver this offseason with absolutely a complete question mark at the quarterback position? Possibly. Could New Orleans go into a full rebuild mode? Maybe, but they just gave their franchise, Alvin Kamara, a massive extension, which doesn't pretty much start to hit their books until next season anyway. So we got a lot of aging people on this team. We have a lot of expiring contracts, and we have a lot of questionable contracts. But at the end of the day, the city of New Orleans, as much stuff as it's been through, as much stuff as it's overcome, and as great as a football tenure as they've had over the last, I don't know, 2 decades or so since Drew Brees got there, they've only accumulated 1 Super Bowl, and I forget the statistic. I'm pretty sure I said it on one of my podcasts. Over the last 5 or 7 years, they have the highest winning percentage in the NFL, but they did not accumulate anything more than an NFC Championship appearance. So it's just ridiculous that they bought in so much, they spent so much money, and they invested in so many players that it didn't pan out to do anything. Obviously, I'll always have a resentment towards this franchise for taking the Super Bowl away from Peyton Manning in 2010, but it is what it is. I think that, karma's a bitch, and, it's come to get you. So y'all got to figure that out, because I have no idea what you're going to do this season.
Yeah, they had great chances. They had, I believe it was the divisional round matchup against the Minnesota Vikings, and they got beat on the last play of the game where Stephon Diggs got the game-winning touchdown in the Minneapolis
Miracle.
They had the NFC Championship game against the Rams where that horrendous pass interference call was not called for.
We didn't even talk about that. It was the worst no call in history, period.
That was probably going to be a trip to the Super Bowl where they were going to play against the Patriots. And then this year, you were at home, you played against the Bucs, and had Jared Cook not fumbled that ball, I want to say probably halfway through the third quarter, more than likely they were going to be in a matchup between themselves and the Green Bay Packers in the NFC Championship for another possible run at the Super Bowl. But Jericho fumbles the ball. Drew Brees ends up throwing, I believe, 3 interceptions in the second half.
Yeah, I think it's 3.
He had a really bad second half, cost him a chance at another Super Bowl, and it looks like that Drew Brees is not going to be the quarterback for New Orleans this year. I think pretty much New Orleans is moving on from him. Now, whether or not that he retires or not, we're still kind of seeing him work out. I don't know if he's going to actually retire at this point, but at this point, doesn't really have anything left to prove. There would be some teams maybe going after him if he were still available, but he's still kind of mulling it over at this point. But yeah, I think New Orleans is going to be in for a rough ride here for these next couple years. And it's just going to be tough because the Saints had multiple opportunities to go and get a Super Bowl from Drew Brees in the latter half of his career. Just didn't work out. And who knows who's going to lead the team offensively next year? Could it be Jameis? Are they going to put Taysom Hill at quarterback? Taysom Hill's not even, I wouldn't even really consider him like a full-time quarterback because they use him for so many different purposes. So who knows? Could they go after Alex Smith? Are they going to go with Jameis? there's just so many unknowns with New Orleans at this point. They're going to have to work them out throughout this offseason. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be a dark time in New Orleans just because, you're letting go a Hall of Fame quarterback in Drew Brees. And it's tough to follow that up. Look at what happened with the Patriots after one season without Brady. And they had a really tough year with Cam Newton running the show. And I think if I'm looking at the Saints right now, I think Jameis is probably going to be their best bet, but it's Jameis. And Jameis is
He
very
signed a 1-year deal, though. That's the thing. So we don't even know if he's coming back.
I mean, at this point, they're going to have to get him on the cheap because they don't have the cap space.
It don't make no difference because Jameis ain't going to take that hit because Jameis already feels like he got slapped in the face when they gave the starting role to Taysom this season when Drew got hurt.
Yeah.
If I'm Jameis's camp, I'm saying I'm letting you guys burn.
Yeah.
You screwed me over and you don't have enough money to pay me. I'm out of here. I think you let them. If you wanted to bank on Taysom so hard this season, you can bank on him next season playing 16 games. That's my mindset if I'm Jameis. Obviously, it depends on the market, but if he's got other suitors that are going to be able to pay him a little bit more, even if it is to back somebody up, they don't have the money next season either. It really it's a lose-lose situation if Jameis goes over there. So I say Jameis is out, man.
The one person that I'm really going to be feeling for these next couple of years is going to be Alvin Kamara because he's pretty much going to be the sole big player for them. Because honestly, I don't see Michael Thomas being on this team that much longer. I think just
unless they're stupid and they keep him.
The issues that you brought up with him before, they are definitely a factor. His cap hit is around $19 million this year, and look,
it's 23. Well, it's 19 total, but if they cut him, it's 23.
They're not gonna cut him. That dead cap hit is way too much. I think at this point they could definitely work out a trade with somebody though. At least get some.
It's a lot of money to absorb for an ankle injury right now. An ankle, a full reconstructed almost. He fucked up his ankle pretty bad.
But you're getting a premier wide receiver, and that's kind of the trade-off. He has a huge cap hit, but he's a true number one. And
hey, Indianapolis, if y'all hear this, go for it.
You think Chris Ballard would make the move?
Absolutely not. They're going to demand a first-round pick minimum. No shot.
I think, what do you think Michael Thomas would get? Like a first and a third?
I think he definitely demands a first because of the potential. However, it's similar to the Carson situation, not necessarily because of the play, but because of the injury. And when he did play, he didn't really produce other than maybe 2 games. That did hinder his value. So I would say if it's not a first, it's definitely a second and a third. But if we're talking prime Michael Thomas, who knows? We might even be talking about 2 first-round picks because he's that big of a game changer. He broke Marvin Harrison's record for a reason. He has been one of the most premier and consistent offensive talents that the league has ever seen in quite some time. So when he's healthy, we know that he can produce, but it's all a matter of who's throwing him the ball. He had a Hall of Fame, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, giving him the ball basically whenever he wanted because he was open in Drew Brees. But can any other quarterback give him the targets and the attention that he needs? I don't know.
Well, I remember the last big receiver to get traded from New Orleans was Brandon Cooks. And I believe, if I remember right, New England traded a first and a fourth for him. And I think Michael Thomas is a better receiver than Brandon Cooks was at the time when he got traded. So
he's a better matchup. He's what, 6'4", 6'3"? He's huge.
He's like 6'2", 6'3". Did you mention that he has the all-time receiving record?
Yeah, that's what I said. He beat Marvin Harrison's record.
Yeah,
Trust me, I watched that game in pain.
Yeah, but you're getting the number one receiver, and that's going to be the trade-off. But you got to take that cap hit, and that cap hit is going to be tough to absorb.
Yeah, I know. I said it jokingly. The Colts can't afford that. We're already taking Carson's big contract. We need to re-sign players. We go and take this man's contract, we're screwed. We're going to have no money to re-sign anybody. So that's not possible. But yeah, man, I'm curious to see what they do because Sean Payton's not an idiot. Their GM in front office has always found ways to make things work over the last couple of years. So if they got to restructure, if they got to cut, my thing is if they cut these players or they let these players walk, or if they restructure contracts and let them walk or trade, there are going to be some talented people available to sign for cheap because New Orleans is going to pay out a lot of their contracts if they do end up cutting certain players. So I think the number one priority, I've been saying his name all offseason, and the offseason has only been a month, but Trey Hendrickson, He had like 12 sacks last year. He demands a double team in a lot of instances, and he is just a very underrated pass rusher. And I think that he demands some attention. He's not going to get paid top pass rusher talent, but $10 to $12 million for Chris Ballard to kind of pay attention to, and say we're not going to get a Shaq Barrett, or obviously not. We obviously didn't get J.J. Watt, but somebody middle, right above the pack, above average pass rusher, somebody to pay attention to. Marshawn Lattimore, who's ever willing to give up picks or assets, that's a great top 10 cornerback in the league. They have a great Teron Arm. I always get his first name messed up. Teron Armstead, one of the better left tackles for the blind side. The Colts need a left tackle right now, but again, what he's going to demand is going to be too much more than what we can afford. So, like I said, there's going to be a lot of available players in this offseason just from this roster alone. And some teams are going to benefit. Like the saying goes, another man's trash, another man's treasure. In this case, there's a lot of treasure to be found.
But in the end, New Orleans is screwed for next year.
Big time. Big facts. Love it. Love every second of it.
And Tampa is going to be like, all right, well, pretty much got the division to ourselves.
Yeah, Atlanta ain't doing nothing. And damn well that Carolina ain't doing shit. Even if they do get Deshaun Watson, they're literally cutting players to make room. And I think their cap space, hold on, give me a second. I think I read they cut K1 short and they've increased their cap space to like $8 million. Like, that's ridiculous.
They cut, well, no, they doubled their cap space. They cut a couple guys. They cut K1 short. I believe they got rid of Stephen Weatherly. Remember, he was he used to play for the Vikings a couple years ago. And then there was another guy. I think it was it Trey Boston? I think Trey Boston ended up getting, he was a cap casualty. And they ended up doubling their cap space. Actually, more than
another similar situation like Arizona. They actually have just about $30 million available. I eat my words.
Yeah.
Next season, they got $129 million. So they can't afford Deshaun right now. It's a matter of what they're going to give up. And I think if I read correctly,
they'll be able to
could be mistaken. It's fuck the picks. There are some packages that include Christian McCaffrey because of how much they demand. Carolina doesn't have players. And I think that they're going to want some form of a player to get back. You're giving your franchise up. You lost J.J. Watt. You got to get something back. Well, so I think that's what's holding them up big time because they're trying to package.
I would give up 3 first-rounders and Teddy. I don't know if that's enough.
When they gave Teddy that money, I said, you're crazy.
Yeah, but they had to fill in the spot. So I don't think at the time they were thinking that Deshaun Watson's whole relationship with Houston was going to burn to the ground at the time that they signed Teddy. And
Teddy's getting 22 this year.
But Teddy was Teddy was playing well. He had that stint in New Orleans where he
New Orleans, yeah. I was talking about this season.
No, but what I'm saying is that Teddy deserved the contract that he got from Carolina because when he filled in for Drew Brees, he kept that team afloat. If I remember right,
5-0, 6-0,
5-1 or 6-0. They people were expecting New Orleans to kind of take a dive after Drew Brees got hurt, but Teddy carried that team.
He did good, but the money and the guarantee that he got, it just to me, but it's for the situation. But it's a situation, right?
It's a quarterback. Dude.
It's a situation, right? So I've always said this, and it doesn't matter what sport it applies to. Any team can have any amount of money upwards of availability to give to an individual, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if the team sucks. His only weapon, realistically, was Christian McCaffrey, who didn't play this season. He did not play up to par. He couldn't throw receivers open. Their offensive line was spotty. Their receivers are Curtis Samuel, Robbie Anderson, and who else? Who was that other short guy?
I couldn't even tell you.
CJ Moore or something more. They have no height. They have no depth at receiver. They had no depth at the tight end position after Greg Olsen left. So he went to a situation where he said, I'm going to go get this bag, but I'm not going to be able to produce. So that's why the city of Carolina is like, I want Teddy's head. Teddy got benched. Teddy got hurt also, so it didn't help his situation. He got the bag because of the performance that he had. It is DJ Moore. It's DJ, not CJ Moore. They played okay, but they weren't anything to be like, oh, wow, like, yeah, let me go to Carolina. No, he chased the biggest amount of money that he could get. And that's what happens when you go to a team with basically no talent around him.
Yeah, but got the bag. Got the bag for a
Yeah, he
6-game
got the
stint.
bag. I don't want Deshaun Watson going to a team that he's going to decrease. It's going to be another Houston.
Yeah,
What was
but
Carolina's record this season?
Carolina was like 6 and I think they were like 6-10, 7-9.
Yeah.
I mean, could be a lot worse. Could be Houston.
Yeah, I know, but still, Carolina record.
You look at the record.
They were
like,
5-11, Kyle.
Okay.
They were
Okay.
one game better. They're trash.
No, they were one game worse. I gave them 6-10.
No, I'm saying they're one game better than Houston.
Oh, well.
Trash. If I'm Deshaun, I'm taking them right off the damn list. Right off the motherfucking list.
Yeah, but he
Bro,
has the Jets on the list too.
But the Jets have cap to sign people. If they get Deshaun, they have no money. And Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore are available on the free agent market. They're in the last year of their contract. They're not re-signing them.
I mean, I was making the case the other day that if he went to Miami, they might be a low-key Super Bowl contender.
That makes the most sense. I think it's Miami, and I think it's New York, and then Carolina only because that's the team he wants. Other than that, I don't have Carolina on this, bro. If my agent come in my house and he say, yo, I got a real offer from Carolina, I said, bro, you better get the fuck out of my house and you better come back with a real fucking sentence. That is ridiculous. Carolina is no better than Houston.
The only point that I made with Deshaun was, in regards to Miami, was that depends if they move off of Tua. And I was making the case when I made the episode maybe like a week or two ago, that I don't think that Miami is going to move off of Tua. But if they were to, yeah, I think it could low-key make them a Super Bowl contender, just because depending on how that trade were to go down, it's going to have to include those draft picks. And I don't know. I don't know if Miami is actually ready to move off of those picks, because look, when you got 2 first-rounders this year and you've got some studs at the receiver position, like we talked about the other day with Jamar Chase and Devontae Smith, you add that to the roster with Tua and the run game that they have, just saying, offensively, it could be scary. They have a solid defense. And that's just with Tua. I don't know if it would significantly change with Deshaun, but I know that those 2 first-round draft picks could go. It's just that I'm going to account for just the dynamic ability of Deshaun Watson. And I could realistically see that team not being like the instantaneous favorite to be in the Super Bowl, but I could see them as a low-key Super Bowl like
contender.
Like, yeah, I wouldn't give them like the odds-on favorite, but they'd probably be like 3rd, 4th, or 5th on the list.
Yeah.
So
it really depends on the situation. I don't think that they draft Devontae Smith. I don't know if you saw what Devontae said last week. He said he preferred playing with Mac over Tua. Yeah, so I think that Tua went, oh, say less, go get Chase.
I mean, what?
Go get Jamar Chase.
I mean, Tua threw him the game-winning touchdown against Georgia in the national championship a couple years.
Yeah, I know, but
a couple years ago. But
you know how athletes can their egos and you're gonna say that publicly? All right, say less. I don't want you here.
I tell you what, though, Matt Jones kept throwing him the ball this year. So
you have to. Are you kidding me? That's how college works. You got a playmaker, you throw it. Florida, Kyle Pitts. That's all we had.
Yeah. But
not all we had, but
look at what they were able to produce this year. So I mean, I understand where Devontae's coming from.
Yeah, I feel it. I really do. But I feel like, once again, this topic has expanded.
This Deshaun one is crazy.
It always comes up, man. It always happens. This is what happens with sports. A topic comes up, and then a transition or a sidebar or some form of a distraction.
A tangent.
That's the word I'm looking for. A tangent populates, and before you know it, 20 minutes on some bullshit we didn't even plan. So if we can find a way to skedaddle back onto our track, our last segment of the day, or should I say our last point to talk about today, is our what if factor. What if Chris Paul got drafted, if he got traded to the Lakers? Now, I ask you this directly. This is prime LA time. This is 2 years off of their championship run. This is the year after they got swept by my Mavs in the Western Conference semifinals. You being the Laker fan that you are, I got to ask your blunt opinion. How livid were you when David Stern nixed this trade?
My blood was boiling because David Stern took at least one, if not two, titles away from Kobe Bryant and the Lakers.
So you think he could have passed MJ or at least tied him?
Yeah, I think so. With the way that team was,
I agree
I
completely.
mean, look at what Chris Paul was at that time. He was already regarded as the prototypical point guard at that point in his career already. He had he played so well with New Orleans, even though that New Orleans wasn't really that good of a team, but he was the main staple to why New Orleans was at least somewhat viable in the Western Conference at that point. When that trade came up, I was all about it. I was really gearing up for the LeBron Kobe finals matchup that pretty much everybody had wanted, but David Stern said, "No, you're not getting Chris Paul. It's not going to happen." And then after that, he goes to LA, but with the Clippers. And to watch Chris Paul in a Clippers jersey for like the next 5 years when he
And
could
not
have
even
been,
make it to a Western Conference Finals, which is hysterical, by the way.
it's just like, he's like that close. It's just in the other locker room. He's just going to pull him over and he's with the Lakers. It's like, it's so infuriating. I've never really seen any sort of trade get nixed like that. I mean, it was a
Ever
three-team
in,
trade.
in any sport, I've never seen it.
And I think the main reason behind it, you have to go back 10 years because that trade happened in December of 2011. I think it was really because a lot of these smaller market teams were basically saying that these bigger market teams are just so stacked.
Cornering the market, yeah.
It doesn't necessarily give these smaller markets a chance to compete. And I mean, I get that. And I think Dan Gilbert was actually one of the owners that was really a proponent of the NBA nixing this trade. It's another reason why I don't like Dan Gilbert. But
He also just lost LeBron
that
James. That's why he was salty.
and that was his fault because he was the one that was
He's
basically
an
causing that
idiot.
relationship to deteriorate between the Cavaliers and LeBron. So he was trying to probably get all of his anger out on the Lakers and them possibly getting Chris Paul because of that. So, I mean, yeah, the way that I see this whole scenario playing out, if Chris Paul had ended up on that team, you've got still, I would say Kobe was probably at the end of his prime at that time. He was still an amazing player. I don't know if he was necessarily in his prime still. He was maybe on the tail end of it, but you had Chris Paul to the team with the floor general that he was at the time. Instant, instant Western Conference Finals contender. More than likely, they go to the finals and probably play LeBron and D Wade in the Heat. And I think realistically, they probably get a championship that would give Kobe 6. It would have tied Jordan, and it could have even brought a 7th for Kobe. I wouldn't rule that out if that trade hadn't gotten nixed by the the NBA's commissioner office. It's just it's one of those things. It's always one of those big what ifs, and it more than likely cost LA one, if not two titles.
So Kobe, I looked it up, in that season was averaging 28, 5 and 5
Cooking,
at his age, right?
cooking,
Right. So
cooking.
just for the record, because some people aren't as aware as we are. Kobe was putting up those numbers in his 30s. Kobe was putting up those numbers with Pau Gasol and Ron Artest and Trevor Ariza. You give him a top 5 player, which is what I believe Chris Paul was at that time, if not a top 10 player at the very prime of Chris's career, and pair him with Kobe. Kobe already has all the mileage. Kobe's taking all the shots. Kobe's got the ball in his hands at all times. You put Chris Paul, who is a perfect floor general, a game manager. Kobe doesn't have to force up shots. Kobe gets better looks. And you know that the pick and roll situation would have been 10 times better with Bynum and Gasol. Well, Gasol would have been traded. So we actually haven't gotten over the actual trade. The trade would have been Chris Paul goes to the Lakers. The Hornets get Lamar Odom from the Lakers, Kevin Martin from the Rockets, Luis Scola from the Rockets, and Goran Dragic from the Rockets. And Pau Gasol would have been sent to Houston.
Yep.
So they would have lost their big presence, kind of that 1-2 punch of Kobe and Pau.
And Lamar.
But
and Lamar.
Lamar. So I don't know if they would have won 2, but I think that the star-powered backcourt of Chris Paul and Kobe could have definitely put them, like you said, in a very good position for a Western Conference run. But it's funny because at the time, I'm over here looking at the standings in the Western Conference at the time, and we have the San Antonio Spurs at the 1 seed. The Lakers ended up still being the 2 seed in that season. The Mavs were the 3rd seed, and the Thunder, who ended up going to the finals that year with a young core of Westbrook, Harden, and Durant, ended up being the 4 seed.
Yeah.
We know that the NBA at this time was full of firepower, full of just absolute studs. The Spurs had their dynasty of their big 3 still incorporated and somewhat kind of like in their prime. The Lakers still had their dynasty trying to be recreated after they had lost to the Mavericks. The Mavericks had kind of let their roster fall apart after our championship run. Jason Kidd went to the Knicks. Tyson Chandler went to the Knicks. JJ Barea went to the Timberwolves, and so on and so forth. But we still found a way to stay relevant and be in the top 3. And as I had said, the Thunder were in the prime essence of their very young careers. And they obviously lost that inevitable year, or that incredible year, inevitably, to the Miami Heat in LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh in their 2nd year in Miami. But I think that the Lakers could have very well made a push to go and compete and get us our Kobe versus LeBron matchup. But it would have been at a price, because we do know that Pau Gasol was a very pivotal piece in that system.
Can you look up the Lakers depth chart for that season? Because if I remember right, instead of having Chris Paul on the team, I think they had Ramon Sessions, I think, as the starting point guard. I don't know if Derek Fisher was still there at that point. He may have already gone to OKC at that point. But if I remember right, Ramon Sessions was the starting point guard for the Lakers. And I was always just kind of thinking, I was like, just imagine if it being Chris Paul on the court. Just like,
all right, you ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
I got Matt Barnes, Steve Blake, Kobe, Andrew Bynum, Devin Ebanks, Christian Ayenga, Derek Fisher, Pau Gasol, Andrew Goodlock, Jordan Hill, Jason Capono, Josh McRoberts, Darius Morris, Troy Murphy, Ramon Sessions, Luke Walton, and Metta World Peace.
Yeah, because I remember Ramon Sessions. I think he was the guy, if I remember correctly, this was the OKC series in the playoffs where I think the Lakers lost, I think, in 6 games.
6.
I remember, I think Russell Westbrook had a fast break and Ramon Sessions fouled him. And Westbrook just threw up an absolute circus shot.
Yes, I remember that. And it went off the backboard.
It was pretty much like, at that point, it really did feel like the Lakers championship run with Kobe had ended. Because it seemed like at that point you had OKC on the rise. San Antonio was cooking at that point because you had Kawhi coming into his own. You had Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, and Tim Duncan still playing at.
I don't think Kawhi was drafted yet, or Kawhi was I think Kawhi was a rookie. We're talking 2011. He barely played.
But even with that said, the fact that they had Kawhi on the team, still a young pup, still learning how it goes in the NBA.
Danny Green,
yeah, they had a solid roster moving forward. So, I mean, when you got San Antonio cooking the way that they were, you got an up and coming OKC team. With the Lakers, it just seemed like at that point, after OKC had started getting the rise that they were getting, it just seemed like the championship run for the Lakers was over. Had they had Chris Paul, I think it would have extended that championship window for the Lakers probably 2 to 3 more seasons. That's just kind of like my take on it. And it absolutely infuriates me to this day that I just can't believe that trade actually got nixed. It's the only trade that I've ever seen rejected that didn't happen because of a physical being failed. It was just a trade that just got nixed by David Stern. I'm just like, I've never seen it before. It's unprecedented. It's unprecedented the way that it happened.
It made no sense because if I remember correctly, we're talking 2011. I am in my senior year of high school, or no, I'm in my junior year of high school because I'm a year older than you.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing this. We're about to go into winter break because the trade was at the beginning of December and the season was going to start during Christmas break. So like we're talking like everybody in school was going absolutely bonkers. Lakers fans, Kobe fans, like the trade had broken. It was announced at night and then it was vetoed later that night or like early in the morning. So like the news were still circulating in high school. You know that conversation. Everybody's
Yeah.
chilling before the bell rings in homeroom or in the hallways. Everybody's going buck wild. And I'll never forget. I don't know if I didn't see it or I didn't pay attention to it or my phone didn't get the notification. Somebody came into school and said that the trade got nixed. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? Like, what do you mean it got nixed? Like, how does that happen? It was official. Like the details were still getting ironed out.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody said it. Everybody looked it up. Our homeroom teacher spazzed. I'm pretty sure my junior year was to all my high school subscribers that followed through. Shout out to Salesian and shout out to Mr. Chisholm. Oh my God, Mr. Ruggieri. We all whipped out our phones and everybody was like, "Get the fuck out of here!" Like, what are you talking about? And bro, at this point, bro, I think I had an NV3, so we had to pay for internet and
I
shit.
remember it.
Yo,
Yep.
the little flip up phone.
Yep. You had
So
a
I'm
keyboard on it.
I'm sitting here and I'm looking it up and I was like, yo, my parents gonna kill me. I don't care. I can't be left out. I didn't even have an iPhone yet. And the people that did have iPhones had the internet right away. Bro, everybody was like, what the fuck? Mr. Ruggieri did not follow sports. He was an art teacher, just very like low key to himself, short dude. And he was like, yo, everybody put your phones away. We're all gonna be in detention. We was all like, bro, Kobe Bryant was about to get another championship, and you want me to put my phone away? Like, it was just funny. I went to an all boys school, so it was a bunch of testosterone and stupidity. Long story short, when that happened, it was one of those like jaw breaking, like jaw dropping moments in sports. Like, how did this happen? Like, it was already done. And David Stern, like everybody hated him. Even people that didn't like Kobe were happy for Kobe. We were just like, what the hell happened? And again, I'm not a Laker fan, but I can't imagine how you felt seeing that it was happening, seeing that it was breaking. You were like, yo, fuck, Chris Paul's coming to LA, it's about to be lit. And then for it to be X within like a 24-hour period, maybe even less, it's just, bro, it's crazy. It's a big what if moment. And I agree. If Kobe pairs up with CP3 and this decent roster, I really think that they find a way to compete. I don't know if they beat Miami because we're talking about prime Braun, prime Wade, prime Bosh against an aging Kobe and a young CP3. It's an immediate mismatch because who's guarding Braun other than Kobe? Who's guarding Wade other than Kobe? He can only guard one. CP3 can't guard those guys. Premier defender, yeah, got a lot of steals, but he was never a perimeter lockdown defender. He's 6 feet. So I think that matchup would have barred a lot of issues for the Lakers, but I think that they would have found a way to get there. So it's a big teetering what if, but it's a good one.
I was ready to put a Chris Paul Lakers jersey on my Christmas list that year. That's what David Stern did to me. And
I would have.
And the thing is, like, that's not the first time where something related to basketball around Christmas time has really hurt me. That trade going through, that would have been like the perfect gift for the Lakers and me, just because it gives the Lakers a possible chance to go to the finals that year. But I want to tell you guys a quick story specifically related to the pain that basketball has given me around Christmas time. So I mentioned that Chris Paul trade getting nixed around Christmas time. When I was, I think, like 8 or 9 years old, maybe 10, I remember I opened up one of my presents on Christmas Day, and it was a video game. I think it was NBA 2K5. That was when I think Ben Wallace was on the cover, if I remember correctly. And I remember I open up the case, and there's no disc inside. I was crushed. I was broken. I was so hurt. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, now I got to wait another full day to play the game because the guy at GameStop, actually, I don't even know if it was GameStop at the time. I think it was a place called EB Games.
EB Games,
yeah,
yes, sir.
That's where I think my parents got the game. And I was just like, you got to be kidding me. Like, this sucks. I'm like, now my Christmas is ruined because now I can't play this game because I probably would have played it probably like right after we finished getting all the presents done. So I end up going the next day. I'm still like downtrodden because I'm like, I gotta wait a full day to play this game. Like, should have been on this game already. Should have been like halfway through the career at this point, like my franchise, whatever it was called back then. I should have been like halfway through it already, but nope, didn't happen. So that happened.
You brought me back. EB Games.
Yeah, that along with the Chris Paul trade getting nixed around Christmas time, basketball has hurt me around Christmas for some reason. I don't know why it continues to do that. This trade was no exception. But yeah, EB games, bro. EB games.
That hurt. That
EB
that
games.
hurt. I felt that. Like that. Like I get you. I said that trending thing that everybody keeps talking about right now. Like you had to be there all over Twitter. Like EB games, KB toys, when Toys R Us was actually fun when we were kids. Like stores like that just don't exist anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like GameStop, other than it being relevant in the stock market, fucking you can return a haul of games and a console and you might get like a nickel for that shit. Versus like, bro, EB Games is just that little hole in the wall video game spot that always had everything, bro. It was lit. And it just, oh my God. I remember begging my mom to go to the mall and go to EB Games.
If I could put this kind of like as like a meme reference, imagine like, have you ever seen those crippling depression memes? You ever seen those before on Twitter or Facebook? It's just like I was so excited to get that game. And then if you were to just like open like the back of my head and all you would see in the like where my brain is just crippling depression when I open up the game or open up the case and there's no disc inside. Like I was so crushed when there was no disc inside that game. Like that's how hurt I was.
Like it's almost like you felt like it was a prank. Like you thought that they were like, oh, you thought we got this for you? Like
no.
like those spoofs when they say, oh, I got you a PS5 and they tape together a PS3 and a PS2, like that initial reaction of
Man.
Where's the game? Like what happened?
And I think my mom was like, what do you mean the game's not in there? I'm like, I opened up the case. I'm like, there's no disc in here. Like she's like, oh, they forgot to put it in there.
You have one job, bro.
Yeah.
Whoever you are, if you see this video,
like, come
you
on.
ruined the child's Christmas.
I
Bro,
know.
fuck you, man.
It happens, bro. I don't even know who the guy was.
It's not supposed to happen.
I've accepted it. Yeah, apology accepted. But yeah.
He ain't apologizing to you. He's probably somewhere out there smoking a doobie or something. I don't know.
Oh, well.
Idiot forgot his one job is to put a game in the case.
It was 15 years ago. I'm over it.
Damn, don't quote it like that, Kyle. Holy shit. I'm still trying to be relevant. I'm in my 20s, bro. You don't gotta whoa, slow your roll. 15 years of shit, fuck.
Listen, I turned 26
in a few weeks.
In 3 weeks. I'm on the downside. I'm on the bad side of 25, bro. You and me both.
How you think I feel, bro? I'm 4 months away from 27.
You getting close to 30, bro.
Okay. You know what, guys? We're gonna wrap this episode up a little early because Kyle wanna die. This man crazy.
Yeah, man. It's gonna happen though. Gonna happen.
All I know is at 26, I've accomplished a lot more than my parents have in respect to being on my own at this age, having a full job, a degree, no kids, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm in a better place. And that's the goal for all of the younger followers, all of the younger people out here on YouTube. If you do see this, don't feel rushed to accomplish everything that the person next to you has. Take it at your pace, finish life the way you want it, and do what you feel is right. So I may be close to 30, but I'm in a happy, committed, and healthy relationship. I moved out on my own. I have a great job. I have my degree. I have a good group of friends. So it all took time to come to fruition. I didn't think it would, but blessings on blessings. God willing, in 2021, more blessings to come. So I know that was like a little personal thing, but if we're going to talk about 30, I'm going to make it look like, it was good. 26, 27 years of goodness.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm just living life. Just enjoying it. That's all I got to say.
Shit. I ain't got much to say after that. Damn. I feel old now. Kyle, I'm about to go cry myself to sleep.
Yeah, you're going to feel like I did Christmas morning when I opened up 2K5 and there's no disc inside.
That's enough. Man, ladies and gentlemen, Kyle DeBrow has, cut his tenure or contract with the Neighborhood Podcast. It's just going to be me. He really does not value his life.
I'm still mentally traumatized by that day. Still mentally traumatized.
I would be too. I know a lot of people that listen to this will feel that pain. Or should I say, will at least understand that pain. Shit, that bothers me.
Yep. That and the Chris Paul trade. They're right there. Right here.
Right well, now you know that's the what if. Think about it. Do you guys think that Chris would have made a difference? Do you think that they would have stopped Miami from their back-to-back championship title run? Let us know in the comments. Let us know below. Always, feel free to comment and let us know what you think should be our next what if subject. We always encourage communication with our followers and our subscribers. We will definitely get to you and respond to you. So don't be shy, and we're always open to it.
Yeah, and pretty much from here, that'll wrap things up. Want to thank you guys for tuning in, whether you guys were listening to it on wherever you listen to podcasts or you were listening or watching this on YouTube. We definitely appreciate the support. If you're on YouTube, don't be afraid to subscribe, like, comment on any of the videos that we have out. Obviously, we'll be uploading some of the segments from this episode after we wrap this up here, and you guys will have access to it tomorrow. So with that said, you guys, that'll wrap it up from my end. Kev, do you want to say anything before we wrap this up?
I just want to say, shout out to everybody that supported us from the beginning, people that supported Kyle and I individually. Obviously, with the 104.6 and 1 podcast and the Home Field podcast, those are great platforms to begin our career. I'll never forget where I started. I know Kyle won't either. Not to say that the 104.6 and 1 of the Home Field have disappeared or evaporated. They'll always be a part of this conjoined podcast, but we are excited to move forward with our project. Like we said earlier, the logo is still TBD as of right now. We're going to get that going, rolling as soon as possible. But I cannot express or repeat how excited I am for the future that holds. We are at 94 subscribers as far as I've seen this morning. We are 6 away from 100. So if you see this, definitely try to subscribe. The content's going to continue to flow like this, if not get better. I'm going to get some more equipment for myself. I know I'm using my AirPods right now, but with the move and everything that I've been going through, money's a little tight. So when I get my boom when I get my boom stick and my additional extra mics and whatnot, it'll be a little bit more better audio, visual effects on my end. I know Kyle's got everything set up on his side. So give me some time for me. And, he got the LED light. He a little bougie. He got a little bread. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what he be doing out there in Tampa.
Don't forget I got Philips light bulbs too. I got those nice little cool light bulbs.
Anyway, some people are better than others. But again, not to get too far off the topic, but just thank you. Please tune in. Please like and subscribe and let us know how we're doing. We really do appreciate all the support and the love. And we'll be seeing you guys next week, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, can't say it any better than that. But with that said, you guys, thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you guys later this week. Peace out, you guys.